Imagine nature decided to play a game of chess, but instead of ordinary pieces, it placed an optical illusion on the board. We're used to thinking that survival is all about staying invisible. A gazelle blends into the dry grass. A lion disappears into the shadows beneath an acacia tree. That's the law of the savannah. If you can't hide, you die. But about 4.5 million years ago, evolution made a move that seems completely insane. It created the zebra, an animal that doesn't just refuse to hide. It practically screams its presence with every inch of its body. To understand just how strange this is, we need to travel back to the Pliocene epoch. Forget the world map you know. Most people assume zebras originated in Africa, but their story actually begins in North America. On the other side of the planet, the ancient ancestors of today's odd-toed mammals began an epic migration. For thousands of years, they crossed land bridges that have long since disappeared beneath the oceans, until they reached the biggest crossroads in their evolutionary history. One branch moved into the cool grasslands of Eurasia and eventually became horses. The other stepped into the blazing furnace of Africa. Here, under the pressure of a changing climate and shrinking forests, the genus Equus split forever. The African savanna was a deadly proving ground where the sun scorched everything alive and the landscape changed with terrifying speed. In this crucible of natural selection, the ancient horse had only two options: adapt or disappear. The zebra chose the radical path. This isn't just a horse wearing a strange striped outfit. Fossil evidence and genetic studies tell us something remarkable. The zebra is a completely different biological strategy, a masterpiece of evolutionary engineering designed for conditions where traditional camouflage simply stopped working. Its black and white code isn't an artist's whim, and it isn't a random mutation. It's an evolutionary document written in the language of extreme contrast. When we look at a zebra, we see a beautiful coat, but nature doesn't care about beauty. Nature cares about efficiency. So why, in a world where every creature tries to become gray, dull, and invisible, did one species choose to become a living target? Why would a prey animal wear an outfit visible from nearly a mile away? The answer lies beyond ordinary human logic. It exists at the point where biology ends and the physics of warfare begins. In the early 20th century, the British Admiralty faced an impossible problem. German submarines were sinking supply convoys with alarming accuracy. Armor wasn't enough. Then a naval artist named Norman Wilkinson proposed a crazy solution. Don't hide the ships, make them impossible to understand. Destroyers were painted with aggressive black and white geometric stripes. The style became known as dazzle camouflage. The logic was simple. If you can't become invisible, become confusing. Enemy rangefinders could no longer accurately judge a ship's speed, direction, or size. Torpedoes missed their targets. Engineers were proud of their invention. But nature had patented the idea millions of years before the first battleship ever touched the water. The zebra is the living embodiment of dazzle camouflage. People often describe the stripes as a form of visual blur, but the reality is far more sophisticated. The stripes launch an attack on a predator's perception. This is where a phenomenon known as the wagon wheel effect comes into play. You've probably seen it in movies. A wagon races forward, yet the wheels appear to spin backward. That illusion happens because the brain struggles to process rapidly changing visual information. A zebra's stripes exploit a predator's brain in a surprisingly similar way. When an entire herd suddenly bursts into motion, the flickering pattern of black and white creates a visual overload. The lion can see its prey, but its internal targeting system begins making mistakes. It leaps toward where the zebra should be, yet by the time it lands, the animal is already somewhere else. This isn't camouflage, it's a biological jamming system, a moving optical illusion that causes predators to miss. But the geometry of chaos does more than just defend against predators. Look closer and you'll see something biologists overlooked for decades. Those stripes form one of the most sophisticated identification systems in the animal kingdom. Every human fingerprint is unique. For a zebra, the entire body serves that purpose. There are no two zebras on Earth with exactly the same stripe pattern. Each one carries a living biometric passport. A newborn foal memorizes its mother's unique barcode within the first 15 minutes of life. In a migrating herd where thousands of animals merge into a single moving mass, that geometric key is what keeps families together. It's a visual language, a system where every individual has a name written across its skin. Even the shoulder patterns are different. Some form triangles, others create loops and spirals. What looks like random noise to us is, for them, a perfectly organized directory of faces. Scientists studying these patterns discovered something even more fascinating. The stripes begin forming before birth according to mathematical principles first described by the legendary mathematician Alan Turing. Chemical reactions spread across the developing skin of the embryo, freezing complex patterns into place. That means the stripes are not random. They are the result of a highly precise biological algorithm. We look at a zebra and see a horse in striped pajamas. Science sees a masterpiece of cryptography. The zebra somehow turned its skin into two technologies at the same time: a jamming device for enemies and a QR code for friends. A perfect balance between visibility and privacy, written in black and white. Now forget the cute wildlife documentaries. The zebra isn't some peaceful cousin of a pony. It may be one of the most aggressive and unpredictable hoofed animals on Earth. To understand why humans never truly domesticated zebras, we have to examine a personality shaped by millions of years of evolutionary warfare. Everything starts with environment. The ancestors of modern horses evolved across the open grasslands of Eurasia, where their primary enemy was the wolf. The survival strategy was simple: see danger, run. Zebras evolved in a completely different world. Africa was an arena packed with professional killers: lions, leopards, African wild dogs, crocodiles. In this environment, running fast wasn't enough. Sometimes you had to fight back, and fight back hard. Over time, that pressure created a very different psychological profile. A zebra doesn't really have a calm mode. Wildlife behaviorists often describe them as living in a permanent state of hypervigilance. Every movement in the grass is treated as a potential attack. Every shadow is a possible predator. Their response isn't simple fear, it's aggressive readiness. What looks like paranoia is actually survival. The zebra's body is built for close combat, and unlike horses, zebras rely heavily on their teeth. A horse may bite and let go. A zebra often does the opposite. It clamps down and keeps attacking. Witnesses have reported zebras hanging on to opponents while tearing flesh with astonishing force. During fights between rival males, ears are ripped off, tails are bitten away, deep wounds are common. These aren't symbolic contests for dominance. They are battles of destruction. The social structure only amplifies the violence. A zebra herd isn't a democracy. It's closer to a dictatorship. A dominant stallion controls a harem and maintains power through constant displays of strength. Challenges happen regularly. The result is a male that spends much of its life primed for combat. So when a human approaches carrying a saddle, the zebra doesn't interpret it as friendship. It interprets it as an invasion. The history of Africa is littered with failed attempts to tame these striped rebels. European settlers desperately needed reliable transportation. Their horses often died from local diseases and parasites. Zebras, on the other hand, possessed natural resistance. At first glance, the solution seemed obvious. Capture a zebra, train it, ride it, problem solved. Except it never worked. Attempt after attempt ended in injuries, broken bones, and sometimes death. The biggest obstacle wasn't even aggression, it was instinct. Zebras possess defensive reflexes that horses simply don't have. When a cowboy throws a lasso, a horse often hesitates. A zebra instantly snaps its head sideways in a violent, evasive movement. It's a reaction refined over thousands of years to avoid the attacks of leopards. Combined with extraordinary peripheral vision, it makes capturing a zebra incredibly difficult. And if one is finally restrained, another problem appears. Many zebras become so stressed that they literally risk dying rather than submitting. Their bodies treat captivity as a life or death emergency. In some cases, the heart gives out before the spirit does. Even famous historical photographs showing zebra-drawn carriages tell only part of the story. Many of those animals were heavily restrained. Others were drugged. The image of the obedient zebra was often little more than an illusion. Eventually, humanity accepted a simple truth. A pure zebra is not meant to be domesticated. But humans rarely stop when nature says no. If force doesn't work, we try genetics. What happens when you combine the blood of a horse with the chaos of a zebra? That question gave birth to the zebroid. For more than a century, breeders experimented with zebra-horse hybrids. The results were disappointing. These animals looked extraordinary, but they inherited some of the worst traits from both parents. They remained nervous, unpredictable, difficult to control, and far too wild for practical domestication. It was as if nature had installed an anti-hacking system, one humanity simply wasn't allowed to bypass. On August 12, 1883, something happened in the Amsterdam Zoo that humanity wouldn't fully understand until much later. Inside a small enclosure, a mare died. She didn't have a name. But with her final breath, an entire chapter of evolution disappeared forever. She was the last quagga, a strange-looking animal that seemed caught between two worlds. From the front, it looked like a zebra. From the back, it looked like a horse. To the Dutch settlers of South Africa, the quagga wasn't a wonder of nature. It was competition. Competition for grazing land, competition for water, and an easy target. Its hide became grain sacks. Its meat fed workers. The slaughter was relentless. With terrifying efficiency, we erased an entire animal from the planet. All that remained were a few museum specimens, old paintings, and silence across the African plains. But the quagga had one final surprise waiting for us. More than a century after its extinction, it became the first extinct animal in history to have its DNA successfully analyzed. Scientists opened a biological time capsule, and what they found was astonishing. The quagga wasn't a separate species at all. It was actually a subspecies of the plains zebra, a close relative that had branched off roughly 200,000 years earlier. The genetic connection was so strong that it sparked an idea many considered almost heretical. What if the quagga wasn't truly gone? What if its genetic blueprint was still hiding inside living zebras? And if the code still existed, could we bring the animal back? That question led to one of the most unusual conservation experiments ever attempted, the Quagga Project. A group of dedicated researchers began selectively breeding plain zebras that showed weaker striping on the rear of their bodies. Generation after generation, they carefully selected animals whose appearance moved closer to historical quagga specimens. Year after year, foal after foal, they shaped living clay, trying to recreate something the world had lost. And eventually, something remarkable happened. The animals started to resemble quaggas. The same brown coloring on the hindquarters, the same fading stripes toward the tail, the same overall appearance seen in 19th century illustrations. Today, these animals roam protected reserves in South Africa. Tourists see them and believe they are looking at a resurrected species. But this is where things become complicated. Is a perfect copy truly the original? That's not just a scientific question, it's a philosophical one. The Quagga Project successfully recreated the phenotype, the outward appearance, the picture, the shape, the visible shell. But appearance is only part of an animal's identity. The original quagga carried thousands of generations of unique experiences encoded through behavior and adaptation. Its ancestors evolved within a specific environment. They developed responses to predators, droughts, migrations, and countless challenges that no longer exist. That invisible history is gone forever. The recreated animals, often called raw quaggas, may look identical, but they are not the same individuals that once walked the African plains. In many ways, they are biological replicas. A civilization attempting to ease its conscience by rebuilding something beautiful after destroying the original. When we look at them, we don't just see scientific success. We see a monument to our mistakes. Like a shattered vase carefully glued back together, the shape may return, but something essential is lost, and it can never be fully restored. While we focus on resurrecting ghosts from the past, real zebras are quietly approaching the edge of extinction. Today, only true zebra species remain on Earth. Each one represents a different survival strategy. The mountain zebra, a rugged climber built for steep terrain and rocky slopes. The plains zebra, the icon of Africa's Great Migration. The striped traveler seen in countless documentaries. And finally, Grevy's zebra, the emperor of zebras, the largest, the oldest, and perhaps the most endangered. Its stripes are narrower, its ears are enormous, almost like satellite dishes, and its call sounds like a donkey's bray amplified through a megaphone. These were the zebras that ancient Romans once displayed in arenas, calling them tiger horses. Today, fewer than 3,000 remain. Think about that. Less than 3,000 animals on an entire planet. A species that survived ice ages, droughts, predators, and thousands of years of environmental change now stands dangerously close to the edge. And while we celebrate recreated quaggas, the original masterpiece is quietly disappearing. We're chasing a ghost while risking the loss of the real thing. Take one last look at those hypnotic stripes. There's a strange irony hidden within them. Black and white, presence and absence, life and memory. Will we ever truly recover the soul of the original quagga? No, that vanished into history long ago. But when we watch modern zebras standing proudly beneath the African sun, they remind us of something important. We can copy forms, we can clone cells, we can manipulate genes, but the essence of wild nature cannot be downloaded, duplicated, or fully recreated. The zebra remains unconquered, a living reminder that some boundaries cannot be erased, proof that not everything in this world belongs to us. And perhaps that's exactly why it still fascinates us, because every stripe tells a story of survival, of evolution, of extinction, and of a wildness that refuses to surrender.